everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Binman, and today you are tuned in for a book talk. Today we're talking all about Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which is a book that has been almost haunting me since I originally read it a few years ago. And rereading it, I was thrilled at just how much I loved it even more. And so yes, spoiler alert, I would highly recommend it. It is not very long and it will definitely grab your attention pretty much right away. Now let's talk about Susanna Clarke. She has won the Hugo Award for her book Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Now the interesting thing is that that story kind of goes against fairies or fair folk, and she said that after she wrote that book she came down with a physical illness, and she said don't mess with the fairies, don't write ill of them. So even though her illness is serious enough to cause her some depression and also her lack of ability to leave the house, and we're talking pre-COVID, she is still able to find a little bit of light in that and kind of joke around with her subject matter. Now, I will say that Susanna Clarke does take her themes a little bit on the darker side, so just be aware of that as you are reading Piranesi. It is a little bit dark, but there is a very lovely light at the end of the tunnel. So something else to note about the author is that this was published during COVID, and it is very COVID related and also not related at the same time. So she did win the Women's Prize for Fiction for 2021, which I think is amazing. And she has said that even though she was kind of in lockdown before lockdown even happened, just from her physical illness, that she was able to live life and see life fully, even though she couldn't really leave her room, which is very, very relevant in Piranesi as you continue to dig into the character and the world that he inhabits. So now let's just do a quick synopsis. Now, I will say it's very difficult to do a synopsis of Piranesi without giving away any spoilers, and there are some major spoilers. So just a quick synopsis is that we are introduced to a character called Piranesi and the other. So two main characters who have conversations every once in a while, but it is definitely mostly about Piranesi. It has nothing really to do with this goat man on the cover. That's one of the statues that inhabits the area, the land that Piranesi lives in. So he is a human. He's a guy who lives in almost like this temple, this white marble temple, and he continues to discover things on a daily basis. We learn about him and his thoughts and his emotions through his journaling. He's an avid journal taker, and there are some major surprises along the way and some enlightenment that happens, and definitely lots of symbolism along the way. So that is as best I can do for a summary of Piranesi without giving away any spoiler alerts. So kind of moving in a little bit deeper into the book, I am going to be letting go some of the spoilers. So if you haven't read it yet, stop, read it, and then come back and see if you agree with my analysis of the characters and just the story in general. And if you want to know what happens at the end, yeah, you do. So let's get into the meat of the book. Piranesi, that is not his real name. He knows it's not his real name right away. He's a very, very interesting character. The more I think about him, the more I like him. You can't not like Piranesi. He is just a really good guy. Now, Susanna Clarke, as she was going through her physical illness, she said that she read Lord of the Rings nonstop. She also read a lot of C.S. Lewis as a child, and so a lot of C.S. Lewis and other literature kind of pop up every once in a while in this book. But Piranesi, the name Piranesi, is kind of hearkening back to an Italian artist by the name of Giovanni Balza Piranesi, and he made these really incredible and intricate drawings of these rooms and almost mazes where staircases lead to nowhere, but they almost look like they lead somewhere. It's almost like the staircases at Hogwarts, how they keep changing. It's almost like that. The world that Piranesi inhabits feels very stark. It feels very maze-like. He has explored almost his entire world, which is actually, it's large, but it's also quite small. He has explored as much as he possibly can with the materials that he has, and he has journaled about everything, and he has taken great notes on what is going on, and the statues. His temple is filled with statues. There are 3 floors. One is, the lowest level is full of these tides and waters that kind of sweep in and sometimes even flood the main level, which is where he lives, and then the 3rd level is full of clouds. So you can definitely see that there's a lot of C.S. Lewis influence and a lot of Christian influence. And even though Susanna Clarke claims not to be like a religious writer, there's definitely some rebirth and just like Christian motifs in here, but in a dark way. Okay, however, C.S. Lewis is also a little dark too, so we'll kind of give her that. Now let's talk about the other person that basically inhabits this Piranesi land, and his name is actually the Other. It's not his real name, but that's what Piranesi calls him, which I think is really interesting because as we come to find out, the Other has meanly, jokingly called Piranesi Piranesi because of the Italian painter, even though that is not his real name. And Piranesi has no idea what the Other's name is and just refers to him as the Other, which, as you continue to get to know Piranesi, you find that a little bit interesting because he names so many things and he's so careful and so loving, but there's something about this other person that he doesn't want to give him a name and just refers to him as the Other. So that feels like there's quite a bit of distance, even though in the beginning Piranesi says that he really likes the Other and has a lot of respect for him, and the Other must have a lot of respect for him, even though we find out that he does not, and he is just using Piranesi to get information in order to do some magical acts that he wants to do. So I love that Susanna Clarke is leading the reader kind of subconsciously to the truth of what is happening without being so overt. It is not easy to figure out. She just drops these little hints, which I love. It's almost like a detective mystery novel inside a hopeful, dark story as well. So Piranesi, let's just kind of get into him. He's such a likable character. He takes care of animals, he takes care of the other dead that are there, not even knowing who they are. He just takes care of the bones. He takes care of himself as best as he can, and he cares for the Other. And then as 2 other people are introduced, he wants to also take care of them. And then when Piranesi is actually able to leave this marble statue world, he just wants to take care of people as people are kind of walking around him. He wants to scream like, you are so special, you are so important. And he just seems like a very loving soul. Now, we find out that Piranesi has been tricked and almost duped into becoming Piranesi in this white marbled statued land. But the interesting thing is, and I love how she writes this transformation of his, is that the person that he was kind of goes to sleep inside of him and someone else is reborn, and that someone else is Piranesi. So Again, another Christian motif, but also it's just like a really lovely way to kind of talk about something that could be really awful, which is a mental breakdown, or, you know, in this awful situation, as we find out, it is a really beautiful way to say, I'm going to take care of who I was before, but I am a different person now, and that's who I would choose to be, and that's who I want to be carrying on, even though he gets some memories back from his old life. He seems so happy and so much more willing and open to ideas and the world and people and places as his new person. So Susanna Clarke also talks about how you as the reader get to decide, is this about colonization? Is it about mental health? Is it just kind of a dupe on C.S. Lewis? What about this book touches you and either gives you hope or makes you stop and think? And for me, the thing that I always come away with, I mean, there's definitely a moment when I get physically angry and upset at what the other is doing to Piranesi as we find out more about the situation. And I feel like I almost want to throw the book a little bit. But at the end, there's such a message of hope. It almost reminds me of the end of Anne Frank's diaries, where she's saying forgiveness to the Nazis, and just there's such a message of hope at the end. And I love that. I love that she ends on such a beautiful high note. It's also, like, one last thought about the book. I think it's really, really interesting that this almost magical land where there are no other people and it's full of statues and full of like almost a coldness, whenever someone visits there, they want to stay. There's a moment when Piranesi is able to grab or is able to bring back someone who had visited previously, and that person just feels such relief and such like an moment. I'm back. I'm home. That magical land feels more home than reality that you and I experience feels. And it makes you wonder, what is this place like? It feels, to an outside person, it feels very cold and very lonely, but to Piranesi and to others who have visited it, it feels very welcoming. It feels home, and even though it's not necessarily easy to live there, it feels very calming because of the water, and it feels very like almost a rebirth, a renaissance of oneself, and just a different way to think about things and to kind of go back inside yourself and think what is actually important. And I think that's the big message of this book, is to just take a pause and think what's really important in your life, and are you doing what you want to be doing? Are you with the people that you want to be? And are you taking care as well? Are you as one with yourself as you possibly can be? So that is the book talk. Thank you guys so much for watching this book talk on Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It's a really mind-bending one, and it's really great and beautifully, beautifully written. I would highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet and you made it all the way through. I'm sorry for all the spoilers, but it is an excellent book. It's very, very fast, and make sure that you do read it quickly, because I guarantee you there's a few moments when it's very upsetting, and then all of a sudden the tides turn and it becomes a lot more hopeful and a lot more less upsetting. So give yourself like a few days, seriously, to just like slam through it, and I think you'll walk away being as haunted in a good way with this book as I was. So I do fashion videos every Wednesday normally, and beauty videos every Friday. Don't forget to check out the Piranesi Influence Beauty tutorial on Friday, and make sure you're following shorts for quick little snippets and some fun stuff coming up too. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you very soon in the next one. Bye!